She just won the biggest case of her life, took down an entire policy that protected bad cops. Cameras flashed, crowds cheered, and as she walked out of the courthouse, she thought the war was over. But then a brick smashed her car window. Inside, a note that said one thing: "You don't belong here." How does a woman with power, the law, and truth on her side still become the target? This is the story of Aisha Coleman and what they did when justice started to win. Bookmark. Go back. On a sweltering August afternoon in Memphis, Tennessee, 35-year-old Aisha Coleman stepped out of the Shelby County Courthouse, head held high. Her blazer was sharp. Her stride was steady. The press swarmed her, cameras flashing, microphones shoved forward, voices overlapping. "Miss Coleman, is the governor planning to sign your proposal this month? Did you anticipate such pushback from the police union?" Aisha smiled, poised but tired. "Change is never easy," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "But it's necessary. And today we took a step forward." She didn't linger. The sun was melting into the skyline, and she had a long drive back to her townhouse. She made her way down the courthouse steps, her briefcase snug in hand, heart thudding with a quiet sort of pride. The kind you earn, not flaunt. Then it happened. A sharp shatter cracked the air. Her head snapped around. Her car, parked just down the street, had a hole where the rear windshield used to be. Shards of glass glittered on the pavement like ice. People gasped. Cameras whirred back to life. A brick lay inside the back seat, surrounded by shattered safety glass. On top of it was a sheet of paper, folded once, stained with what looked like motor oil. Aisha moved fast, her heels grinding into the sidewalk. She opened the car door and pulled the note from the brick, hands steady though her gut twisted. 3 words were scrawled in red marker across the paper. "You people never learn." No signature, no initials, just rage. Behind her, someone muttered, "Was it random?" She didn't respond. The crowd around her had fallen silent. Even the reporters stood still, as if waiting for her to say something. But she didn't. She simply stared at the note, then at the brick, then back to the courthouse steps she'd just descended with the air of a victor. The sun dipped lower. The badge on her lapel, Governor's Chief Legal Advisor, gleamed in the light. But in that moment, Aisha felt less like a public servant and more like a target. Because she knew what this was. Not random, not misplaced, not the work of some angry stranger who couldn't spell. It was a message, and it was just the beginning. 2 weeks earlier. The highway outside Nashville stretched like a ribbon of melted tar, glistening under the weight of the August night. Aisha Coleman's black sedan sliced through the darkness, her hands steady on the wheel, her thoughts still tangled in the policy drafts tucked inside her briefcase on the passenger seat. It was just after midnight. The sky hung low, heavy with humidity. Streetlights flickered past like silent sentinels. She'd spent 12 hours at the Capitol, locked in negotiations over a sweeping reform bill that aimed to tear open the roots of racial bias in policing. Her blazer was wrinkled now, hair pulled into a bun that had long since given up, but her focus remained sharp. 10 miles from home. She exhaled, easing into the quiet. Then, red and blue exploded behind her. A patrol car tailing her without warning. Her stomach dipped. She checked her speed, 55. Not a mile over. Turn signal had been used. Tags up to date, everything in order. But the dread that pooled in her chest wasn't new. It came from muscle memory, from every story she'd heard growing up. From every funeral where someone said he was just driving. Aisha pulled over. Gravel crackled beneath her tires. Her fingers flexed once on the wheel before releasing. She rolled down the window as the cruiser idled behind her. No movement yet. Then a door slammed. Heavy footsteps approached. The flashlight beam hit her face first. Blinding, deliberate. Behind it, a man built like a bulldozer. White, buzz-cut, mid-40s, thick arms, thicker attitude. His badge caught the reflection of her headlights. "Baxter." "Evening, ma'am," he said, voice clipped, eyes already full of suspicion. "You know why I pulled you over?" She kept her voice calm even. "No, officer. Was I speeding?" Taillights out. Her brow creased. She'd just had the car serviced 3 days ago. Every bulb checked. "That's odd. It was working earlier tonight. I had it inspected." "You calling me a liar?" he snapped. The words hit like gravel to the teeth. Aisha inhaled slowly. "No, sir. I'm simply clarifying." She reached deliberately for her license and insurance, already in her hand, already prepared. Years of knowing how fast things could go wrong. She extended them through the window, fingers open. He snatched the documents without a word, studied them longer than necessary. His eyes shifted between the papers and her face, like he was trying to make something not fit. "What's a woman like you doing out here this late?" he asked. A pause. "Coming home from work." He raised an eyebrow. "I'm chief legal advisor to Governor Langston," she added, not as pride, but protection. He snorted. "Governor, huh? Fancy title." Then he tossed her license into her lap like a crumpled receipt. "Step out of the car." Her pulse spiked. She didn't move. "May I ask why, officer?" He stepped closer. His hand drifted to his holster. "Because I said so. Now." The gravel crunched under his boots as she slowly unbuckled her seatbelt. Her mouth was dry. Her blazer clung to her arms. She stepped out, heels sinking slightly into the shoulder of the road. She kept her hands visible, her body calm, her voice tucked tight behind her ribs, hands on the hood. She obeyed. The metal was warm, the engine still ticking beneath her palms. "You carrying?" he asked. "No, sir." He didn't wait for permission. He flung open her driver's side door and started rifling through her car like it belonged to him. The glove box popped, the console emptied. Her purse dumped. Then, he paused. From inside her passenger seat, he pulled out a plastic bag, small, clear, white powder inside. He turned toward her with a grin that chilled her blood. Well, what do we have here?" "That's not mine," she said, voice rising, cracking. He laughed, a dry, barking sound. "Sure it ain't." And just like that, her world tilted. He yanked her arms behind her. The cuffs bit into her wrists, the hood of the car pressed cold against her cheek. Her blazer snagged on the bumper, her briefcase flung aside, burst open, papers fluttering into the dirt. "You're under arrest," he said, smug as a man who already knew no one would question him. "Possession, resisting. Let's see what else I can tack on." And as he shoved her into the back of his cruiser, as the gravel dug into her knees and the sky swallowed her whole, Aisha knew one thing for sure. This wasn't a routine stop. This was a setup. The holding cell smelled like bleach, rust, and something older. Something that clung to skin and memory alike. Aisha sat on the metal bench, hands cuffed in front of her now, wrists raw and burning. Her gray blazer was smeared with dirt from the hood of her own car, one sleeve torn near the seam. She blinked against the flicker of the overhead fluorescent light, a soft buzz that never stopped humming. She hadn't been allowed to call anyone. She'd asked twice. The desk sergeant just grunted and said the phones were down, and then turned the volume up on his football game. Aisha Coleman, chief legal advisor to the governor of Tennessee, was now just another black woman in a cell. No title, no voice, no one listening. She replayed it over and over again. The stop, the cuffs, the bag of powder she'd never seen before. Baxter's smirk burned behind her eyelids like acid. Her blood still pulsed with disbelief and fury. And underneath it, something worse. Fear. The door creaked open. She looked up, blinking against the hallway's glare. A silhouette stood in the frame. Tall, lean, jaw like carved stone, a charcoal suit wrinkled from haste, and in his hand, a briefcase she recognized before she even saw his face. Marcus Tate. She nearly exhaled her soul. He stepped in, eyes scanning her with a mix of fire and worry. "Jesus, Aisha, what the hell did they do to you?" She didn't answer, couldn't. Her throat tightened too fast. He dropped the briefcase on the bench beside her and crouched. "You okay?" "I'm here," she whispered. "Barely." "Not for long," he said, already flipping open the latches. "I posted your bail. They're processing it now. You'll be out within the hour." She blinked. "How?" Marcus looked up, eyes gleaming. "Because unlike them, I believe in receipts." He pulled out a slim black tablet, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. A dashcam video played, muted for now, but clear as glass. Aisha's taillight, glowing, bright, unbroken. From the moment she passed the cruiser to the moment she stopped. The timestamp burned at the bottom. "It was working," Marcus said, jaw tight. "There goes his probable cause." Her heart jumped. "Where'd you get this?" "Filed a request as soon as I heard. I called in every favor I had. This came in 30 minutes ago." He swiped again. Now another video, shakier, filmed on a phone. A young man stood in a dark parking lot, his face half in shadow. "Name's Tyrell," Marcus said. "Washes cars at that gas station near the overpass. He saw Baxter bend into your car and slip something into your glove box. Got it on tape." Tyrell's voice crackled through the speaker. Nervous but firm. He pulled it from his vest pocket, looked around, then shoved it in. I knew something was off, so I filmed it. Marcus hit pause. The frame froze on Baxter's hand inside her car. Aisha stared at the screen, then at Marcus, then back again. And for the first time in 12 hours, she let her spine relax just a little. "You have all of this?" she asked. "I've got more," he said. "That sergeant up front? Already got a complaint history a mile long. I'm digging deeper." She leaned back against the cold wall, eyes closing for just a second. Not in defeat, but in something like oxygen, like belief. "Thank you," she said, voice hoarse. Marcus stood, straightening his tie. "We're not done. Not even close. We're going to make them wish they never touched you." Outside the hallway, a buzzer sounded. A voice called her name. Her release was processing. Marcus extended his hand. Aisha took it. And just like that, her fight began. The morning sun glared off the courthouse windows as Aisha stepped out of Marcus's SUV, her blazer freshly pressed, her heels clicking a steady rhythm across the pavement. She held a folder thick with evidence, dashcam footage, sworn testimony, timestamps, receipts, facts. Beside her, Marcus walked with purpose, his navy suit sharp, his jaw tight. They were here to file an official complaint against Officer Clyde Baxter. They had the video. They had the witness. This wasn't guesswork. This was a case. Inside, the air buzzed with quiet tension, paper shuffling, clerks murmuring. A bailiff at the door nodded without interest as they made their way to the desk. Aisha slid the folder forward. "Formal complaint," she said. "Assault, false arrest, evidence tampering." The clerk raised an eyebrow, took the folder, and wordlessly stamped the top page with a heavy thunk. Filed. Aisha felt the sound settle in her chest like a promise, but it didn't end there. An hour later, a new witness stepped forward. Mrs. Jenkins, her neighbor of 12 years. Gray-haired, bent slightly from arthritis, but her voice was sharp as ever. "I saw that same patrol car," she said. 3 times, circling her street before the arrest. I remember the plates. I remember the man. He stared at her house like he was sizing it up. They recorded her statement, notarized it, and added it to the file. By noon, a hearing was scheduled. Quick, too quick. Marcus frowned. "Something's off," he muttered as they stood outside courtroom 3. "This speed, it's not normal." Inside, the courtroom felt colder than it should have. Rows of wooden pews, a single flag drooping in the corner. And at the bench, Judge Leonard Grayson. A name Aisha knew, former sheriff turned judge, revered by some, feared by most. He sat like a monument, stone-faced, eyes sharp under heavy lids. His gavel rested on the bench like a warning. Marcus presented the case. He was clear, calm, methodical. The dashcam disproves the reason for the stop. The witness confirms evidence tampering. We have a sworn affidavit. We're asking for a full investigation and immediate disciplinary action. He tapped the folder once, firm. The judge didn't blink. Grayson turned to Aisha. "You're the governor's legal advisor, is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're accusing a decorated officer of planting drugs and assaulting you?" "Yes." "Despite no history of misconduct?" She hesitated. "We've uncovered several complaints." "That were never substantiated," he snapped before she could finish. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "I've read Officer Baxter's report. He claims you resisted, became aggressive, tried to flee." "That's a lie," she said, voice tightening. "And yet," Grayson continued, "you offer this court dashcam footage, a cell phone video, a neighbor's recollection, not exactly airtight." Marcus stood. "Your Honor, with respect, the footage clearly shows." "Enough," Grayson barked, slamming his gavel once. The room fell silent. He looked at Aisha again. His eyes weren't just skeptical. They were cold, icy, amused. "You're obstructing justice, Miss Coleman, harassing a law enforcement officer with unproven claims. I'm increasing your bail to $50,000, cash or bond." The words hit like a sledgehammer. Gasps rippled through the room. Aisha froze. Marcus stepped forward, stunned. "Your Honor, this is retaliation." "Sit down, counselor," Grayson snapped, "or I'll hold you in contempt." Aisha couldn't breathe. She'd come here with evidence, with truth, with law on her side. And now she was standing in front of a man who didn't care. The hearing ended in a blink. The gavel fell one more time. The bailiff reached for her arm again. Cold metal cuffs clicked shut. As they led her out of the courtroom, past the whispers, past the stares, she didn't cry. She didn't flinch. But inside, something cracked. Because in that moment, she realized the system wasn't broken. It was designed exactly like this. The metal door of the holding area clanged shut behind her. Aisha stepped into the late afternoon heat, her blazer rumpled, hair falling loose at the temples. Her wrists still bore the red marks from the cuffs. Across the courthouse lot, Marcus waited beside his SUV, phone to his ear, jaw locked tight. "You're out," he said, sliding the phone into his pocket as she approached. "Bondsman owed me a favor. Don't ask how I pulled it. Just get in." She didn't ask. She didn't say a word. The ride home was quiet. Memphis drifted past in a blur of flashing traffic lights, boarded windows and sirens in the distance. Her neighborhood finally came into view, neat little yards, porch lights blinking on one by one. But her house was dark. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. Silence. A stillness that didn't feel right. The air was thick. Something off. Then she saw it. Her living room window was shattered. Glass sparkled like frost across the floor. Her law degree, the one she'd framed herself after passing the bar, lay face down. The glass split down the center. She turned toward the hallway and froze. On the wall, in dripping red spray paint, scrawled in frantic, jagged strokes, "Go back to the gutter." Beneath it, another line, cruder. A slur. The can of paint was still rolling slowly in the corner, leaving a smear with every turn. Aisha backed up. Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "Yes, I've been targeted," she said. "Break-in, property damage, hate speech. I think I know who did it." The dispatcher's voice was flat. "Is the suspect still on site?" "No," she said, "but I have a name, Officer Clyde Baxter." A pause. "Then we'll send someone when a unit's available." They hung up before she could reply. She stared at the phone. 15 minutes passed. No sirens, no callback, nothing. A knock came at the door. A soft one. She turned slowly. On her porch stood Mrs. Jenkins, robe pulled tight, her silver hair wild under the porch light. Her eyes wide, voice thin. "I saw that same cruiser," she whispered. "Parked across the street, lights off. Same guy behind the wheel." Aisha's throat closed. "He was here last night too," the old woman added. "Just sittin', watchin'. Like he was waiting for something." Aisha thanked her, gently closed the door, and locked every bolt she could. She stood in the middle of her living room, eyes scanning the wreckage. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was a message. And it wasn't just coming from Baxter. The court, the cuffs, the hate sprayed across her walls, the silence from 911. None of it was random. She looked around, at the broken glass, at the shattered frame, at the red letters still dripping down her wall. It wasn't just her job that painted a target on her back. It was her skin, her voice, her refusal to stay silent. And for the first time, Aisha understood this wasn't one man's vendetta. It was a system. And she had just poked the hornet's nest. The morning light hadn't even cracked through the blinds when Aisha's phone buzzed violently on her nightstand. She groaned, reaching for it with stiff fingers. It was a text from Nia. "I got it." Aisha sat bolt upright. By the time she swung her legs off the bed, Nia was already banging at the front door, laptop bag slung over her shoulder, braids flying. She stepped into the living room still littered with glass and red paint, but her eyes were electric. "I pulled traffic cam data near that gas station. Cross-referenced with security footage. One of the clerks gave me access on the low. He was there that night." She flipped open her laptop, fingers flying. The screen played grainy footage. Aisha's sedan, Officer Baxter leaning inside. And then, there it was. His hand, reaching into his vest. Something small. A baggie. He slid it into her glove compartment, glancing over his shoulder before quietly shutting the door. Clear. Undeniable. Time-stamped. Aisha's breath caught. "Play it again." Nia did. Marcus arrived 10 minutes later, still in yesterday's suit. The moment he saw the footage, he didn't speak. He just pulled out his phone. By noon, the clip had aired on Channel 9 News. Governor's legal advisor framed. Dashcam lies exposed. Justice for Aisha flashed across the chyron. And then the internet caught fire. The clip spread like gasoline on pavement. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Justice for Aisha Baxter exposed, hack systemic rot. By mid-afternoon, protesters flooded the courthouse steps. Homemade signs, loudspeakers, voices chanting her name. Say her name, Aisha Coleman. Aisha watched from her living room, surrounded by friends and fear and momentum. For the first time in days, her knees felt steady under her. Then the phone rang. It was the governor. Theresa Langston's voice came through steady and sharp. "I've seen the footage, Aisha. I'm furious." "So am I," Aisha said quietly. I'm holding a press briefing at 5. We're going public. You're not alone. 5 o'clock came fast. Langston stepped behind the podium at Capitol Hill, cameras flashing. Her voice rang out across the nation. I've appointed a special counsel to investigate both Officer Baxter and Judge Leonard Grayson. The footage speaks for itself. We will not tolerate abuse of power in this state, not under my watch. Aisha watched the screen in stunned silence, her breath stuck halfway between relief and disbelief. Marcus grinned, fist bumping the air. You did it. Nia's phone buzzed non-stop, her inbox flooded with interview requests. The hashtags hadn't just gone viral, they were global. And for one burning, brilliant moment, Aisha felt it. Not just vindication, not just hope, power. But somewhere deep in her chest, a colder thought flickered. If the truth could shake them this badly, what would they do now that the world was watching? The sun had barely risen when Aisha's phone rang again. Not a buzz, not a ping, a call. Nia's voice came through, broken and frantic. Eli's shop, it's on fire. Aisha didn't ask, she didn't blink, she just ran. By the time she and Nia reached the corner of Main and 14th, smoke choked the skyline. The barber shop, Eli's pride, the one he'd built from nothing, was now a skeleton of black beams and twisted metal. Fire trucks still sprayed what was left, their hoses hissing like dying serpents. Eli stood across the street, his bald head gleaming with sweat, apron charred at the edges. His chest heaved as he turned and saw them. They came for me, he said. Aisha stepped forward, heart sinking. Who? He pointed to the brick wall still standing. Spray-painted and dripping red, she's next. That night, they gathered at Nia's apartment. Tension sat thick in the air. Then the second call came. From Oxford, their childhood home. There'd been an explosion. Their mother had been home. By the time they reached the hospital, she was already in surgery. 3rd-degree burns, smoke inhalation, 2 cracked ribs from the blast. The doctor said it was a miracle she survived. Eli paced the waiting room, fists clenched. Nia sat hunched over her laptop, trying to make sense of the timeline, the motive, the madness. Aisha stood frozen, staring at the note they'd found at the scene, left on the scorched front porch, pinned beneath a rock. Stop, or she's next. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just stared until her eyes burned and the words branded themselves into her skull. The next morning, Governor Langston went live. Flanked by law enforcement and press, she stood behind the podium at Capitol Square. Her voice was steel, measured, controlled. These attacks are an outrage. Ms. Coleman's family has been targeted in a manner that demands immediate sweeping investigation. I've instructed the Attorney General to open a full inquiry into Judge Grayson, Officer Baxter, and any accomplices. We will get answers. The crowd roared. Reporters shouted over one another. The momentum surged again, but it wouldn't last. Minutes after the speech, the sky above the crowd buzzed. A low, mechanical hum. Eyes turned upward. A drone. It hovered above the rally like a vulture. Then, without warning, it dropped something. Small, brown, wrapped in plastic. It landed with a soft thud at Langston's feet. Security scrambled. Cameras zoomed in. The package burst open on the pavement. Inside, a blood-streaked police badge, Baxter's. Taped to it, a folded piece of paper. Langston bent to read it, but the cameras caught the words before she did. Langston is one of us. Gasps rippled across the plaza like a wave. Langston's face froze. Her hand dropped, her mouth opened, but no sound came. And in that single moment, everything changed. The press turned on her. The crowd erupted. Cries of betrayal, booing, signs torn down, cameras flashing like gunfire. Aisha watched it unfold live, standing in Marcus's office with Nia and Eli at her side. The badge, the note, the look on Langston's face. Shock, she didn't know, but her stomach twisted. Because if Langston really was with them, if the one person in power who stood beside her was part of this machine, then what now? Where did she run when the people behind the podium were part of the fire? Aisha clenched her fists, and for the first time she asked herself the question that would define the war ahead. Was she being protected or played? The footage from the drone hadn't even finished looping on the news when a knock rattled the door to Nia's apartment. Eli moved first, gripping a baseball bat. Nia peeked through the peephole, tense. It's a cop, she said, young, alone. Aisha nodded. Open it. The man who stepped in had deep brown skin, a Memphis PD badge, and eyes that scanned the room like he already knew exactly what he was walking into. Detective Jamal Harris, he said quietly. Off the record, I've been watching this unfold for weeks, and I think it's time someone handed you a loaded weapon, metaphorically. He reached into his coat and pulled out a USB stick. This, he said, placing it gently in Aisha's hand, is how they all burn. She plugged it into Nia's laptop. Files popped open one by one. Hundreds of emails, internal memos, encrypted chains between Judge Grayson, Officer Baxter, and a third name that sent a chill down her spine, Edwin Grayson. Leonard's younger brother, a dishonorably discharged ex-military extremist and, according to Jamal, a confirmed funder of at least 3 white supremacist militia cells in Tennessee. The emails were sickeningly clear. Target Coleman. Push her to snap. Baxter's in. Edwin funds. Langston won't last once she's exposed. Aisha stared at the screen. They weren't just trying to silence her. They were trying to use her rise to collapse the state from the inside. It's a system, she murmured, echoing her own words from nights before. But it's worse than I thought. Jamal nodded grimly. I'm in uniform, but I've got limits. You're past them. Do what I can't. Within the hour, Marcus, still in his hospital bed, joined a call with a hacker named Dex, a wiry white guy with a cigarette tucked behind his ear and eyes like a sleep-deprived hawk. Grayson used the court's email. Sloppy old bastard, Dex muttered. I've mirrored his whole server. This is going live. They built a live stream platform, embedded the emails, synced them with dates of Aisha's arrest, Eli's fire, and the bombing at her mom's house. Dex overlaid timestamps, embedded IPs, even looped Baxter's body cam footage for good measure. At 8:45 p.m., Marcus hit the stream button. Operation Red Gavel, the conspiracy behind Judge Grayson. Within 10 minutes, Red Gavel trended. By 20, it crashed the local courthouse's phone system. By dawn, the FBI launched a formal raid on Edwin Grayson's compound. Weapons, documents, cash. They cuffed him on his porch, shirtless, furious, and roaring about patriots as agents shoved him into an armored van. 3 hours later, Baxter was dragged out of a dive bar on I-55, buzzcut soaked in sweat, high as a kite, muttering about being set up by the liberals. And before the sun could set again, Judge Leonard Grayson was escorted from his bench in a blazer and handcuffs, trying and failing to hide behind sunglasses. All 3. Gone. In 48 hours. Aisha stood at her window the next morning, watching the Memphis skyline blink awake. The air felt different. Sharper. Realer. 3 men, she whispered. 3 men tried to break me. Behind her, Nia leaned against the counter, her phone lit up with media requests. Eli stirred a pot of coffee, and Marcus, bandaged but smiling, sat propped on the couch, a laptop in his lap, watching the stream still looped on every major news channel. 3 men down, Nia said. Aisha didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because for the first time since that stop on Route 55, the silence wasn't threatening. It was earned. It was nearly a week later when the ruling came. The courtroom was packed. Press, protesters, law students, veterans with folded arms. But when Aisha entered, everything went still. She didn't wear her blazer this time, just a sharp gray dress, no makeup, no jewelry, just presence. Judge Ramirez, a new face, appointed by federal order, read the verdict without fanfare. Officer Clyde Baxter, Judge Leonard Grayson, and Edwin Grayson are hereby barred from any public service, civic contract, or state-recognized organization for life. Civil damages are to be awarded to Ms. Aisha Coleman and her family. Immediate protection remains in place. The gavel fell. Not in corruption, not in mockery, but in justice. And this time the room stood and clapped. Later that afternoon, Aisha stood once again on the Capitol steps. This time, not as a victim. This time, as the new chair of the Tennessee Criminal Justice Reform Commission. Governor Langston, face composed, voice calm, stood beside her as cameras snapped and microphones leaned in. Aisha Coleman has faced the system from the inside out, Langston said, and she stood when it tried to crush her. That's the kind of strength we need to rebuild it. Aisha didn't smile. She didn't need to. She just nodded, stepped forward, and said 5 words. This is only the beginning. That night, Memphis glowed beneath a soft haze. The city hadn't changed, its bones still humming with tension, but something in the air had shifted. Aisha sat alone in her living room, the walls repainted, the windows replaced. Her branded arm rested on the armrest. The scar there, rough, raised, permanent, peeked out from her sleeve. No longer hidden. Outside, the crickets buzzed. A car passed. Then silence. Then a sound, a faint rustle at the front door. She rose slowly, crossing the floor, barefoot, quiet. She bent, opened the door, and saw it. A single flyer slipped under the frame, plain white paper, no blood, no badge, just 6 words scrawled in jagged ink. We're still here, watching you. She didn't flinch. She didn't even frown. She folded the paper calmly, walked through the kitchen, and stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched out before her. Orange streetlights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. She ran her fingers gently over the scar on her forearm, the one they'd branded into her flesh with heat and hate. She stared out into the dark and whispered, barely loud enough for the wind to catch, "Let them come. I'm ready now." If Aisha's story spoke to you, don't leave quietly. Her fight was painful, but powerful. A reminder that truth matters and that standing up isn't easy, but it's necessary. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Mr. Mac's Stories for more stories that speak truth to power. Your support gives our team the strength to keep creating stories that matter. Thank you for watching and for standing with us. Mr. Mac's Stories, where every story fights for something.